Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today we are going to be looking at some specific behaviors that we, as entrepreneurs, consultants, professionals, and speakers, don't tend to do in terms of our selling. So I'd like to welcome Josh Flower to the show. He's a B2B sales professional who has closed millions in software and services. He's an expert on elite sales performance and how to find your life's purpose. Josh teaches that people must focus on personal development and learning sales skills to drastically improve their lives. Welcome to the show, Josh.
A real pleasure to be here, Kim. Thank you for having me.
So I guess the first obvious question is, are there certain skills and behaviors that we're not using as either entrepreneurs, professionals? Because generally we don't get into these types of things to be salespeople.
Well, and that's the thing, that's why I was so excited to come on your show, Kim, because I think for a lot of people that are in entrepreneurial arenas, they have ideas about how they can serve a market or how they can share their zone of genius with their, potential customer base. But the actual rubber meets the road around selling is usually a bit of an afterthought, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs. And it's an area that I think that I could likely help them with, despite the fact that I'm not an entrepreneur. Recently launched my own entrepreneurial endeavor, but I'm a 25-year corporate sales professional. So I thought, let me come in here and share some of the tips and techniques that I think could be valuable. And I'll share with you a couple, and then let me know what you think. The first is developing confidence around representing your product or service to your potential market. And that confidence starts with you as the entrepreneur. So I'd love to see entrepreneurs, work on that, be a bit more confident, not just in what they're selling, what they're bringing to the market, but in their own personal ability to make a difference. So that's one. And then another one that I think is huge is empathy. And I know your audience is selling all sorts of different things, so the context is going to be different for each of them. But learning how to connect with another person, come into the interaction confidently, but endeavor to connect with them is one of the most powerful things you can do, whether you're in sales or entrepreneurship, to really open the account with the individual on the other end of the line or on the other end of the video call. So those are a couple of quick tips.
Love it, Josh. Love it. I think one of the things, and let's dive a little bit deeper in here. One of the things I've seen, and not only am I an entrepreneur and a consultant myself, but I work with a lot of, entrepreneurs, consultants, even salespeople, sales trainers, all sorts of people in different professions. And I think the one thing that is consistent, and you touched on it a little bit, is the fact that, we don't get into this to sell. We have something that we want to use to serve people with. And then we get into this thing called entrepreneurship or consultancy, and we realize that part of it is selling. Now, why do you think that, when people start to realize that, why do you think they're so hesitant to move forward in that spot?
That's a great question. And I think it's because sales, let's use a modern term that's floating around right now, is sort of icky. It's got the ick, some people feel, because it seems pressury. It seems a little bit unnatural. It's, when we don't have that confidence going into an interaction with a customer, we feel like maybe we're trying to pull one over on someone. And so people just have this resistance to pushing for what they want, pushing for the value that they're bringing to the market. So I think that's what it is. Also, it's a skill set. And if you're an entrepreneur, there's an area that you love, right? And you want to bring that to the market, but learning the skill set to effectively bring it into the market is a challenge. And I think people sometimes are a little bit hesitant to want to bring on that challenge. So I think those are some of the things working against today's entrepreneurs. But I'm here to tell you that there are some basic frameworks that you can apply to be more successful at selling. But it starts with the belief in what you're doing and knowing that being confident, going in there and being persuasive, asking for the sale, reflecting when things don't go right, and instead of trying to get away from those negative experiences. These are ways that as entrepreneurs, you can improve your conversion rates and get more customers, which ultimately is what you want. You're out here to make a difference, right, to your
Yeah.
customers. So we got to find a way to serve those audiences better, starting with sales.
I loved how the fact you talked about skill set because I think there's some misconceptions out there that either you're a natural salesperson or you're not. And if you're not a natural salesperson, well, I guess this just isn't meant for me because, I'm not a natural salesperson. So, the fact that you didn't talk about, personality, characteristics, all of this, you said this is a skill set and it's a skill set that you can learn. I think that's important for us to understand that it can be learned. And like any other skill set, there's a P word in there, and it's called
Yeah,
practice.
exactly. I'm
But,
glad I knew
one
what you were
thing,
going to say there.
yeah, there's only one P word, right?
Yep,
We won't
indeed.
go into some of the other words, but there's one P word, that's practice. Uh, one of the things that I'd like to dive a little bit deeper on, I know you've come with some teaching and training, and we are going to get to that.
Mhm.
But first, we're going to take an ad break, and then I've got one other area I want to go into, and then I'm going to let you loose to do some teaching and training. Audience,
Amazing.
Uh, I love sharing RTI Publishing's resources with you. And this one here is a checklist that's going to help you determine if you are ready to write a book to build your business or not. So listen to this short ad, and we will be right back. Writing and publishing a book that converts readers into client and scales your business is hard, but it doesn't have to be. Get my free checklist at bit.ly/create and scale that will show you what you need to do to have your book become a well-converting lead generating tool. Welcome back. Josh, one thing I just wanted to go into was the rejection factor, because I think that, you talked about how we don't want to really retrospect on those negative sales experience, and I think it goes into you know it feels like rejection. So I would love for you to share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And look, rejection is comes part and parcel with being in sales, with promoting yourself or promoting your service in some way. It's not going to be appropriate for everyone. We know this. Also, let's take a minute and realize that it's very natural to want to avoid rejection. Rejection is generally
Mhm.
not a positive thing in our lives. We want to be accepted as human beings, whether that's socially, when we're out there trying to meet people or make new friends in, all the social arenas, and that extends over to business as well. So there is nothing wrong with you wanting to avoid rejection. I don't know if it's a personality quirk or something that allows salespeople to go into this profession realizing the rejection is going to be there and certainly experiencing it early in our careers and persevering through that. I don't know really what that is, but it's one of the things. And thankfully, I think entrepreneurs have this skill set, this perseverance, right? The
Yeah.
ability to continue adapting. Most entrepreneurs I know had a vision for how they were going to go to market with their product or service, and then they have sort of iterated on that, right? They've adapted and pivoted, to better serve the market. Well, guess what, folks? You're dealing with rejection and just, handling it so that you can keep putting one foot in front of the other. So I would suggest that your audience has that resilience and perseverance. But you're absolutely right. If you're going to get really good at this, there needs to be an awareness that it's going to happen and a willingness to reflect on it. And this makes up part of the teachings that I'm going to get into, on your episode today, Kim. But certainly there's a framework that people can practice. And I would suggest it's just like anything. There's going to be steps within the framework that are straightforward and comfortable to walk through, and then there's going to be others that are going to be a little bit painful, and the reflection part is the pain part. So just a little bit of a precursor there.
I know in my own journey, there were a couple of things that, when I was really starting to learn how to sell, and not manipulatively, but in a genuine way. And one of
Love
the
that.
couple of things I realized, first of all, generally they're not rejecting me. They're just saying no to what I
Correct.
have to offer. And sometimes it's not even no, sometimes it's just not now. But the other thing I realized was that, no's are just part of the process. And I started to count no's. I started to figure out, it actually became a game with me. How many no's did I need to get a yes? So then no's were just like, okay, this is part of the process. One no, two no's, three no's. Ah, that yes is coming, because usually in around 4 or 5 no's, I get a yes. And so it changed how I looked at it, and it allowed me to sort of gamify it to the point that when I got no's, it was like, yes, I'm one step closer.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Gamify, that's the right term, you know? And Kim, you said something so valuable there, which is they're not rejecting you. And guess what? I know some of your audience is out there maybe selling their own name is in what they sell, their consulting service or something like that. But you've got to find a way to realize that the rejection isn't personal. It's, we're out in the business arena here, right? We're asking people to make monetary investments in what they're doing. So that it's that element that people are saying no to. It's not you. And I'm just going to tell folks that you've got to understand that early on, the pain is worse. It's like anything in your life, right? When you first start doing it, it's a brand new thing. The pain is going to be worse. I know some of the entrepreneurs in your audience are sort of fresh into this endeavor. To those folks, I promise you it's going to hurt a lot more early on. Kim's been doing this for a while. So Kim, probably figured out this gamified framework years and years ago. And now I'm sure, Kim, you just brush off the losses at this point, right? Because I
Yeah.
just keep going, right?
Yeah. And the thing is I've also refined the process. So one of the things is that I've narrowed down my
Yes.
target market. So the amount of no's I get are a lot less, because the people I approach to work with me are highly qualified to work with me. And usually it's not no, it's just not now. So either, they don't, the two biggest ones for me in publishing are time and money. And, you know, it was funny going into 2020, my business was not in a good place. Just a lot of circumstances happened. You know, COVID hit, and all of a sudden the one excuse was gone. Now everybody had time. And so that was actually a good time for me, because half of the excuse was gone. They no
Yep.
longer had the time issue. They were sitting at home doing nothing. And so that was actually a blessing for me in disguise. Now, don't get me wrong, many people struggled, and
Mhm.
many businesses went through probably one of the worst times in their lives, and I am so empathetic and sympathetic to that. But for me, it was actually a blessing.
I can tell you that it worked in my favor as well. Outside of the personal challenges that I think we all went through, the isolation, the fear, things like that, I sell online training software platforms and related services. So, as you can imagine, after that couple months where everything went on pause, businesses began considering how are we going to train people when we can't bring them together. So, that actually worked quite well for my business. But I want to just call back to something that you said, which is a part of one of the frameworks that I wanted to talk about today. So I call it the secret to sales success, but frankly, it's the secret to any sort of success. And it's a multi-step process that goes something like this. You learn, right? Or in the case of an entrepreneur, for you, you sort of refine your offering. Then you try, so you get it into the market and you do your very best to position what you think the market wants. Then you fail. So that is a step in the process. You do not avoid step 3. You step in it, right? Failure. Then where it gets really hard, I mean, if you can get yourself up and out, and entrepreneurs do, to try and sell, where the learning really happens is step 4, when you reflect. So you have to
Yeah.
reflect on what happened. Why am I failing? Why is my conversion rate not good enough? In your case, right, you realize I got to refine my offering. I've got to refine the market that I'm trying to target with my offering so that I can become more successful. And that's the adaptation, right? So after failure, reflection, then we adapt purposefully, and then we get back on the horse and we try again. And the cycle just continues to repeat itself. So I'd say for your audience that is maybe confident in their offering, you've got to do that regarding your sales approach. And again, this is a
Yeah.
skill. This is a skill. So don't forget, step 1 is learn. Go and learn about how to sell what you've got. There's no one guru, Josh Flower doesn't know the exact way to sell your service. So go try and find some experts in your field, learn from them, but then get out there, try, fail, reflect, and adapt, and continue that process. I promise if you do that over and over again, everything's going to start moving in the right direction. And of course, Kim, it's hardest the first few weeks and months that you go through this process, right?
Yeah. When you were talking about that, I was thinking about one of my clients, Bill McCormick, and we're working on his book. And one of the things he talks about is echo chambers. So that's where, you've learned from someone there's only one way to sell,
Yep.
whether it be online, offline, social media, phone, chatbots, like whatever, right? And sometimes we can get stuck in that echo chamber of thinking that there's only one way to sell. And, I loved what you said is the fact that, find that person to work with you. It took me 12 years. For 12 years, I spent a lot of time in the network marketing arena when my kids were small because it allowed me to work from home. And every time I joined a company, I would say to the person sponsoring me, I want you to train me. And they would promise that they would train me. And then when I got in the company, they hand me the company training and they said, just do this. Well, the company training does not teach you how to sell, believe it or not. And I'm like, I want you to mentor me, teach me how to sell. And they're like, well, just go out there and do it. Well, that doesn't help me.
It's
Finally,
terrible
after
advice.
12 years, I joined a company that had what was called district managers. Now, these people were actually employees of the company. They were not building up lines or anything like that. And their job was to teach and train people how to sell and how to recruit. And so I spent 2 years with the district manager. I sat on her hip. I spent every moment of the day that I could with her that she would allow me to. And I learned how to sell and I learned how to recruit because she was willing to teach me. So
Amazing.
like I said, there was 12 years of frustration in that process, going through several companies and trying to do what they said. But you talked about mentorship. And for me, mentorship is key in terms of learning, and it's an investment that's going to allow you to, get through that sales learning process a lot faster because you're getting feedback. I would do what she said. I'd try something, and then she'd say, "Okay, try it this way. Change this a little bit." You know, don't be so desperate. Like you're like overwhelming people, right? Because you just right. So there was a lot of things that she gave me feedback on that allowed me to refine the process very quickly.
Amazing. I mean, the sad part is that it took you all those years of toiling away on your own to finally get that mentor. And if I think back to my sales career, so I've been doing this for close to 25 years, and I was very fortunate right out of the gate, Kim. I had strong sales leadership that taught me the ropes, and I was able to learn quickly. And then since that stage in my career, I've been the mentor to mentees. So I've had people working under me. I've led entire national sales organizations. I realized that I love being in the field. I love closing deals. That's what I enjoy. And so now I mentor new salespeople that come up through my company in that way. But what I'd say, the challenge that I think entrepreneurs have is it's not easy. Like, who's the mentor that you're going to find that you can sit on their hip and learn
Yeah.
from? And so I would generally recommend to these folks, you got to go find them online. You've got to go find them in books, or you've got to find them as coaches. And it's one of the
Yeah.
reasons I started my own coaching practice, is to be that support in a group environment where people can learn and ask questions, and because I think that there's a lot of mystery around this. And again, I just want to remind
Mhm.
everyone, this is a learnable skill. You may not be, the guy you see in the movies, or Zig Ziglar, or some of these names that we all hear about. You don't need to be. You just need to be functional at this and know that you're on the right path, and have an iterative process, like I mentioned, to get better and better. And you'll improve fast. Like, how much better did you get in the 2 years working with that DM than you did in the previous 10? Like, it was order of
Yeah.
magnitude difference, right?
Oh, yeah. I went from not being able to sell to being in the top group category of sales representatives for the company.
Amazing. Amazing. Like, that to me is proof positive. And so much of it, and again, I think why you'd asked that question before, of like, where's the resistance? Why do people resist? Well, the resistance is internal, because it's an uncomfortable thing to do when you don't have
Yeah.
experience doing it. It's very uncomfortable to talk to people and try and persuade them in a direction to get an outcome that you want. Most of us aren't comfortable with that. So just having someone that is whispering to you that you're on the right path and you're doing the right things, and although this step feels like it doesn't feel natural, it's still the
Mm.
right step for you to take. And so go and take it. And if it doesn't work out, that's not the universe telling you you did the wrong thing. It's just an opportunity to learn and grow. And this is what people need to hear, so that they keep going. This, I promise you, entrepreneurs, this is going to be one of the hardest things you learn how to do really well. But once you put in a little bit of time and effort and dedication and slog through it, you'll get so good at it. I, in my heart of heart, believes anybody that's got the personality that it takes to be an entrepreneur can learn how to do this effectively. Maybe not world class, but certainly effectively to grow your business.
When you were talking there, I was thinking about Jim Rohn. And
Oh, love Jim
when
Rohn.
I first joined this one company, somebody gave me a CD of one of his trainings. And he talked about batting averages. And he talked
Mm.
about the fact that even though he was not the greatest salesperson in the world, he knew his numbers. So, something he said that's never left me. He says, "Do you know that a 300 batting average means you strike out 7 out of 10 times?" I'm like, okay, I didn't know baseball. So I was like, oh, wow. Like, that set me free. But then he talked about the fact that how he won any sales contest he was in because he knew his numbers. He was not the best salesperson, but because he knew his numbers, he could figure out how much work he needed to do to reach that sales goal within a certain period of time. And then he just put his hand to the plow and he did it.
Simple as that, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, and regarding the numbers, Kim, like, I love the baseball analogy, because the difference between striking out 70% of the time and 75% of the time is, like, the guy that does it 70% of the time is going to the Hall of Fame. And the 75% is not. That's just an average player, an average hitter, right? So it's not a huge difference,
Mm,
but still there's way more failure than there is success. So if you just accept that there's going to be
yeah.
failure, and it's okay, it's a part of this. The last thing you want to do is try and avoid it. Go into it. I love that by Jim, because he just, yeah, this is the amount of work it's going to take. So if I want to get 300 sales, that means 1,000 calls. Simple as that. Or
Yeah.
1,200 calls. So yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Now there's another framework I'd be happy to share with folks, which is just sort of like a simple, like, The one that I had before, I call it the secret to sales success, or the secret to anything success, because it's just what you've got to do to get good at something. But I've also got some practical tips that I can give folks about selling, if now's the right time for that. I don't know if you had any other questions you
Yeah.
wanted to ask me first. Yeah.
No, that's good. I love it. I was just going to ask you to kind of head there.
Okay, good, good. So, again, it's a mindset that I want people to keep in mind. So I want you to be confident in what you're doing. You've taken the time. You're out on your own.
Yeah.
You should be confident, right? But you've got to represent that, and people can read who you are. So you've got to get confident at having your 30-second pitch on who you are and what you do and how you can help. So that's number one,
Yes.
refine that. Number two, I want you to be empathetic towards others and be genuinely curious. So in my business, so again, I have my sales career that serves me well and I love and I enjoy. I've also started my mindset coaching practice to help professionals across areas in ways that they can improve their overall performance in life. But a question that I always ask is, what are you struggling with, or what are you challenged with right now? And being genuinely empathetic about that. Like, I want to hear it. I want to understand it. So
Yeah.
that's the next thing, is you need to show people that you really care. And you have to really care. You have to really care. Then you've got to demonstrate to them that you hear them. So these are
Yes.
sales tricks, and not tricks. That's the wrong word. These are sales techniques. Is when someone then tells you, hey, this is a thing that's going on with me, you've got to listen to that. And then you've got to demonstrate to them that I heard you. And not just by repeating it back to them. The way that you do this is you say, I can empathize because I went through something similar, or I'm working with a client that had a similar problem. This is how we handled it. Right. And so for all the folks in your audience, they'll have these customer success stories that they can draw out. But that's a very simple sales process: confidence, empathy, and curiosity, followed by demonstrating that you've heard them. That can then pave the way to getting into your pitch and stuff like that. But that's a great opener for folks to really set the stage for a selling opportunity. And I hope that's something that can be valuable for people.
I think that is very valuable. It's wonderful step by step. We're just going to shift gears. We got a few minutes left. So there's one more
Okay,
little
good.
segment I want to do before we close. So this is a question that I ask people who come on the show who are not authors. So there's a question you get if you are an author. Here's the question you get if you're not an author. So if you were to write a book to build your business, what would you write about?
Oh, what a good question. Now, I want to say something. I'm about halfway done writing a book. And what I chose to do was actually publish a lot of my thoughts through a blogging process. So I actually have a blog with about 50,000 words worth of articles there. So I definitely am no stranger to capturing my thoughts with the pen, but certainly not a published author yet. So that's the caveat there. So I think what I would write on, Kim, I'm going to answer this in two ways, okay? So the first is around my favorite techniques and tips for selling. And I've got a blog post article that includes 101 of my top techniques. So I'd write a book on that and just expand upon them. So that would be an area that I think I could serve anyone that needs more, sort of
Yeah.
selling, understanding of sales in their lives. But I think where I'm at today, so as I mentioned, I've launched a coaching practice around mindset, because mindset is literally everything. I've learned this in my sales career. Going in with the right mindset can allow you to be successful and to persevere. And I think that this is what people need to focus on to be successful. And so writing a book about how to create an elite, ironclad, positive mindset would be my book title. And I would start with helping people understand their true desires and motivations, and really focus on their belief structures. Because I think for a lot of us, and I see this in selling a lot, people have limiting beliefs around their capacity to sell. And so learning how to identify limiting beliefs and swap them out for supportive ones, I think, is a really key thing. So Hopefully that answered your question in a bit of a roundabout way.
I think that would be a wonderful book. Josh, we've only got a few minutes left, so what I would love for you to do is share a final thought with us. And if people have enjoyed, not if, the people who have enjoyed today's episode and want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Love it. Kim, time flies. You make this very comfortable and easy, and I cannot believe that we're almost at the end of the road here. It's been so much fun for me. So thank you again. Um, the final tip, the thing that I'd really like to drive into people's heads is that this is a learnable skill. Yes, we all know the people that have charisma and that, seem to be born for this sort of thing, but you can learn this much like you've learned anything in your life. So I want to just let people know that, and I would be honored if I could help in some way. That could be through consuming my free content or getting onto one of my coaching programs. So where can people learn more and find me? Maybe it's a little bit of a unique approach, but I invite people to join me on Instagram. And the reason that I love Instagram, so I've got my LinkedIn profile. My name's a memorable one, I think, Josh Flower. You can find me there. But Instagram is a place that I post videos every single day about the habits that I employ in my life, my morning routine, some of the challenges I go through at work, how I prepare for big negotiations and prepare, in my sales career, but also in my personal life. So that's a place that you can actually get to know me a little bit better. And then I would love to hear from you directly. Before anybody buys a program with me, I want to DM with you. I want to get on a call with you, and I want to learn more about you to make sure that there's some synergy. So people can find me there, and my handle on Instagram is Josh Flower and then the number 1. So please look me up there and follow me there.
That is fantastic. I'm just writing that down to make sure that we get it into the show notes.
Excellent.
Josh, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've enjoyed today's conversation, and I just want to encourage the audience, if you're struggling with, your mindset, if you're struggling with your belief in yourself to be able to sell, if you think that you have to already have some sort of charisma to be able to sell, you know what? Connect with Josh on Instagram, follow him, start watching what he does, because it doesn't take much to change a mindset. And once it's changed, the results follow. So, highly recommend connecting with Josh on Instagram. Audience, if you're watching and you're wondering where to go next, you are going to be going to episode 427, Selling from
Wow.
the Heart, with my dear friends and clients, Larry Levine and Daryl Amy. And if you are on YouTube, you know the routine. My daughter has put the thumbnail somewhere here on the screen for you. If you're on the podcast app, you're going to be scanning back about 60 episodes. We're episode 488. So, Josh, you are episode 488. You're going to be scanning back to episode 427. I promise you, it's another amazing episode about authenticity and selling and how to do it with heart. Thank you so much for listening today, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.